Hello, everybody. This is Yaks and the Stacks, our podcast where a bunch of dorky librarians get together and talk about whatever topic tickles our fancy, whatever week. This week, the topic is horror. I'm Natasha. I work at the main library on levels 3 and 4 as a library assistant.
I'm Catherine. I work also at the main library on level 4. I'm one of the teen programmers there.
And I'm Hayden, and I also work in level 4, and I'm another teen programmer.
Tons of teen programmers. We're just teen programmers.
Teens.
Oh gosh.
So, this week our topic is horror and all things spooky. Hopefully the rest of the month we'll be putting out more episodes that focus on horrific, spooktacular frights and chills.
Scary things.
Scary things. All things scary.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, when I was thinking about starting these scary, the scary stuff and starting to talk about creepy stuff, I was trying to think about when I was peak teenish, which was I don't know, 16. I was right in this middle of it. The thick of it was the worst.
In the thick of your teenage years.
Yeah. Remember that? Just ew. Just
sweaty.
the makeup. Yeah, the sweaty. What's up with that? Anyways, so I was trying to think about what scared me, what movies, what media was I taking in that really scared me. And one of the ones that came to mind, and this is even before I was a teen, which is sort of sad, but Nightmare on Elm Street was my jam. It scared me. It was really just it just was one of the first scary movies that I ever watched. I watched with my parents, which is also what? Why? But I just did. And
I think we all have those movies that we were probably a little bit too young for, that we watched and maybe with our parents, and it was kind of weird, but it's an experience.
American kid experience. Yeah. It was a weird almost kid experience, but I remember I watched it on a VHS tape. And I specifically remember there's a part in the movie. So before I say anything, I might spoil some things for Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, really the whole series. So if you're wanting to watch that, maybe just hang out, ignore this part of the podcast. But I remember this part.
30 seconds button.
Yeah, I remember this part where this, the whole premise is there's a guy who can get you in your dreams, which is terrifying in the first place. Especially for a person who had dream issues as a kid. I had sleep paralysis and I had weird dreams. But there's one part where this girl falls asleep in class and she thinks that she wakes up and she sees her friend who died. And her friend is standing in the doorway, if I remember correctly, and she's in a body bag. And she was all bloody. And then there's another part with that same friend and she has a centipede, the bug, in her mouth. And I remember being I've had enough. This is too much. Yeah. That is the strongest memory of being scared and horror when I was a teenager. And I mean, it just got me into it more because that's an addicting feeling, being scared.
Yeah.
But that was my big moment where I was ooh, that really scared me.
I think A Nightmare on Elm Street is actually Elm Street, not Elm Stream. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a very interesting, from this totally dorky point of view of, it's kind of interesting because it was one of the first of the real slasher movies, and slasher horror kind of became this staple genre of horror where it's not really scary. I feel I watched one of my first kind of scary movies was Friday the 13th, and it definitely had some moments in it, but it's mostly just almost tongue-in-cheek. They're kind of silly. The Scream movies, especially the Scream movies, are very silly. Ghostface is a very silly kind of villain, as much as he's scary because he's killing people and that's crazy, but he's also kind of wacky, and it's a little over the top and self-aware in a kind of interesting way. And there's this trend in the 70s and 80s that like you get Nightmare on Elm Street, you get Halloween, you get Friday the 13th, you get all of these kind of like foundational slasher movies that are all kind of weird and low budget and kind of like kind of strange movies that just became like so foundational to this genre that would like later produce like Chucky and Saw and Happy Death Day came out a few years ago. Like all of these kind of movies too. So it's kind of interesting when you think of it like that.
Yeah, I do definitely get the feeling as I like go back and watch like I Know What You Did Last Summer, stuff like that. Like those movies are almost making fun of themselves. Like they're almost their own stereotype.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
But they're like classics. Like I still like just love to watch them. Halloween was the first scary movie that my dad, the original Halloween, was the first scary movie that my dad saw in theaters. And I remember him telling me that like before that, he had like only seen like monster movies. And he was like, yeah, it was just so crazy. Like it scared everybody so much because it was the first idea that they'd had where they were like, this is just a regular person and he can like kill you. Like that's the
it's like not a monster,
actor.
it's not something supernatural, it's just a dude who's crazy and he's
yeah.
in your house and that little piano tune is playing and he's gonna get you.
Oh. Like when she's in the closet, oh my God, there's like a scene, I don't even remember what Halloween it was, but she was in the closet and he just like knocks because he kind of has like a Frankenstein type like body type.
Yeah, like with the mask too, and like the way he like stands all stiff and like walks all stiff and like
yeah.
it's kind of
but he just like knocked the closet door. So scary.
Yeah. Like he's scary. Part of the reason why he's scary is because he's just a dude, you know, because in the time, like you said, a lot of the horror movies, like when you even think of Alien, which came out the next year, as we talked about in our first episode, my favorite horror movie. But, you know, we talk about stuff like that and, you know, you think, oh, it's a monster. It's something that's so far removed from reality that like it's scary, but in an abstract kind of way. You know, you're not actually scared of an alien breaking into your house and killing you with its poison spit. You don't think that's really going to happen. But a crazy dude in a mask breaking into your house and stabbing
There's
you.
crazy people all the time.
Yeah, that could happen. Like that's just real enough that it's like, ooh, that's kind of creepy in like a, I guess, more intimate way. Like it could actually happen.
Makes you like
and that's
suspicious.
kind of scary. Yeah.
I think like paranormal too, kind of like the if you wanted to go like the other direction for horror, not like oh this is a tangible like relatable subject, but like oh no this is like very super abstract like a spiritual thing, but it like makes you like look around every corner and like what is that noise? Like every little noise you're like oh it's a ghost. Like it
Exactly.
I think that's like you're like, yeah, Catherine, that's the point. But like, no, like I think like,
but I get what you mean. And like you said, it's kind of an addicting feeling, you know, like adrenaline and the fear and it's like, oh, like it scares you, but it's like you want to keep being scared. And I guess part of why, you know, stuff like that is like because it's safe. It's a safe way to be scared. You know, like you don't actually want to be scared for your life. Nobody ever, I'm going to say this, almost nobody, I'm sure 99.9% of people don't ever want to be in a situation they genuinely fear for their life. Like horror as a genre is kind of a way to like explore that feeling of wanting to be afraid or experiencing fear, but in a way where there's no risk. Like you're not going to get hurt. Jason Voorhees is not going to come out of the screen and get you. Like it's not going to happen. You don't have to worry about it. So like you can kind of experience the like rise and fall of all of the summer camp teenagers and like it's scary, but there's still like a wall between you, protection from Jason Voorhees. He's not going to get you in real life. Like
Hayden, what was your movie? Like what do you remember being like your favorite horror movie when you were growing up?
That's a hard one because I have never particularly enjoyed horror movies. I'm trying to remember if I've actually seen any of the really big ones.
Or just like what like creeped you out, I guess.
I read
it didn't have to be a horror movie.
I read Goosebumps when I was a kid. There was one that used to really make me kind of anxious. Like I didn't get freaked out by a lot of them because I mean it's Goosebumps and it's like the brain that ate the whole town. Like it's kind of, you know, it's out there a little bit. There was one that was Don't Fall Asleep, maybe. And every time this kid would fall asleep, he would wake up in another life. So he would like fall asleep, and every time he would fall asleep, he'd wake up and be like, I just want to go home to my family. But he would be like a businessman who's 40, who has children. And then he would wake up again and be like a woman who is running the circus. And then he'd wake up again and be like a kid, but like a starving kid who lives somewhere else. And he would like get terrified to go to sleep because every time he'd wake up, he'd be somewhere else. If I'm remembering that right, people might correct me. It's been a very long time. But I remember that one kind of
scary concept.
Yeah, I remember that one freaking me out a little bit. None of the, because Goosebumps did a TV show for a little while, none of the TV show really got to me. I remember when I was really little, probably like 6 maybe, I told my cousins that my mom said I was allowed to watch whatever movie they were watching. She did not. And it was all I remember about it, and this is kind of like a graphic description, so I apologize, here's your warning. All I remember is that they turned it on, and somebody's eyeball got ripped out and thrown against a wall, and then like I might remember like a dog eating it, and I might not. I don't remember what movie it was. I know it was supposed to be scary, but then
horrible.
My aunt was like, "Your mom said you can watch what?" And then my mom was like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" It was ridiculous.
And you were like, oh, I wish I hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I wanted to unsee it the minute I was seeing it. I remember being really scared of the Scream thing. I don't know what it's called, but I was really afraid of it when I was probably 7 or 8.
Like Ghostface mask guy with the like face.
Yeah, it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. I don't know why. It just really I never saw the movies. It just scared me.
It was such a popular Halloween thing too, and so like I remember going. I also never saw those movies. I mean, I've seen like bits and pieces enough to like piece it together now as an adult. But I remember going trick or treating, being in my like pink Power Ranger outfit, and like looking around and seeing all of the like Scream masks and being like genuinely scared and being like, why? You're mean teenagers. I'm 9. I don't like it.
Mean teenagers. I'm 9. No, I think like also I feel like part of the reason that those things are so popular is because it's so easy. Like these slashers are almost all kind of categorized by they're just people with a mask on, like Jason, or not really Freddy. I guess his face is all messed up. You could just put on a mask to be Freddy Krueger, or Michael Myers, or whoever is Ghostface in whatever Scream movie you're watching, because it's always a different guy. Like, all of these, characters, it's just like put on a black shirt and a mask and you're Ghostface. It's easy. It costs $10 to do a Ghostface costume. Like, it's so easy. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things that like these slasher movies will come out around Halloween. Everybody dresses up as the characters for Halloween, and it just kind of gives you this like cultural impact that kind of spreads out. Like it just sticks because everybody has like this fond memory of watching this movie and then dressing up as the killer Halloween. It's not like I'll watch like a monster movie, Alien, for example. Again, you can't just dress up as the alien from Alien. It's like
that takes a lot. It takes some work.
Undertaking of like a cosplay, probably hundreds of dollars of like work, lots of time and effort to like make a costume for that creature. But Michael Myers, like just buy yourself a blue jumpsuit and a Michael Myers mask that you can get for like $5. Michael Myers, just stand really stiff, walk around with a plastic knife, and you've done it. Like I don't know. I think
speaking of Michael Myers outfit or whatever, his like easy costume. One time when I was a kid, I had a Halloween party with my friends, and it was like one of the only, to this day, it's like one of the only parties I've ever thrown where like people came to it. And I think purely
it's a little sad, but it's also very relatable.
Yeah, like who goes? Like who has these parties that are successful? I've never been to one. I'm just kidding. I have, but not mine. I think the reason that it was so successful personally is because my dad bought us a air hockey table that year. So we had an air hockey table
wanted
and
to
that.
come
Yeah,
air hockey.
exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, my uncle dressed up as Michael Myers and like rang the doorbell, and I knew better. I was like, nay, I'm not answering. I'm not doing it. And my friend, a good friend of mine, went and opened the door, and it was my uncle dressed up like Michael Myers with a real knife, because that's what you did in 1998. And my friend just like jumped, I swear to God, like cleared the entire living room like a cow jumping over the moon. But she was just like jumped over all of us. So yeah, it is really easy because he just literally had like, I don't even think he had a whole jumpsuit on. I think he just had on jeans and like a mechanic's shirt and like the mask.
That's all it takes.
It was so good. But taking it back to Goosebumps, you know which Goosebumps really freaked me out? Any of the Slappies ones with little marionette
Yeah.
Slappy.
Little- I've not
Mhm.
read those ones. I keep having
the
to like update the Filmolux on like we keep getting new copies of the Slappy World ones, and I'm like, I should read these because we have so many.
They're good ones. They are really good. They're like really legitimately scary. Like he's just there's something about a puppet that's just like creepy, you know? Like I mean even like listen, I was the kid that was scared. I don't know why I didn't mention this one. This is another movie that really freaked me out when I was a kid. Pinocchio, like the animated one from Disney. Can we talk about how creepy that is when he turns into a donkey? Like you're
That
just like
movie's terrifying.
traumatized.
Yeah, that movie is
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying.
Very scary.
So
some
that one
moments.
was also really scary. Yeah, like they just like I don't know. And then it like you feel like you're like watching a whole different movie. It's really long, I think, because he gets like swallowed by a whale. Doesn't that happen in Pinocchio?
Yeah, he is
yeah.
swallowed by a whale.
You're like-
Okay, this is gonna sound really geeky. I don't remember much about the actual Pinocchio movie. A lot of my memories of it come from
my
the
God.
Pinocchio
The real life
stage.
one? Oh no.
And,
Okay.
No, like the animated one. It comes from the Pinocchio stage in Kingdom Hearts. Because it's been so
Oh,
long
you're
since
so
I've seen
valid.
the actual Pinocchio movie, like the animated film, that like my memories of like Kingdom Hearts have eclipsed my actual memory. And that's how I'm sure that he was swallowed by a whale, because there's a huge point in time where you're in the
Yes.
whale's belly in the game, and it's the worst part of the
And
game.
it's awful. It's horrible.
Awful.
So much. The walls all look like everything's horrible.
It's so awful and gross. I hate it. But yeah, so Pinocchio does get swallowed by a whale.
Okay, but I just had to look it up. There was a movie. The reason that I was like, oh my God, if you say this movie, then we really are like somehow long lost relatives, because there was this movie called The Adventures of Pinocchio, and it came out in 1996. It had Jonathan Taylor Thomas in it. So
Ooh.
like that guy that had the great hair that like a bunch of people had a crush on, you know, may or may not have been I that had a crush on him. I don't know. But that was a crazy movie, and it was also like really scary. If you go and like look at the trailer for
Oh my
that movie,
god, I'm
it's
like looking at the pictures.
dude, seriously. I mean, can we talk
it's
about that?
scary.
Like his weird nose. Like he's.
Oh,
I mean,
you should put a
obviously,
picture
Pinocchio-
when we post this. You should put like a picture of this guy, like in the description. of
Yeah,
this
I really
episode,
should.
like- oh, that's
Um,
creepy.
He's a creepy looking guy. So there was like a real life version, and my grandmother used to have it. My grandma had like a weird collection of like we had an original well, I don't know if it's the original, but we had an animated VHS tape of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe at my grandmother's house. Like, did you know there was an animated movie?
I had
Yeah.
no idea.
I
Yeah,
haven't seen it, but I knew it existed.
we had that, and like that was how I knew. Like, of course we read it because it was like, you know, C.S. Lewis, and she really liked him and stuff. But then she made us watch. Like, she didn't make us. That sounds bad. I love my grandma, but we had this movie. We watched it.
She forced us to watch Lion Wardrobe.
Yeah, but we watched it. It was animated. And it was really. It isn't creepy, but that's just a fun fact about me, Catherine. Anyway.
No, I was gonna say like stuff that scared me as a kid that I feel like wasn't supposed to be scary, but like I think everybody has those things that like they were just afraid of for like no reason. Almost they were just afraid of like that thing, and I have like all these memories of things that just like freaked me out, like movies that scared me, like scenes in like, you know, in The Little Mermaid, the part where you like see all of the little like creepy things at the bottom of the ocean that like were the
Grab
other
onto
people
her?
that are yeah, and they grabbed on her. Like that really scared me as a kid. That really scared me.
Yeah, that is
E.T.
scary.
scared me. E.T. the extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
He was gross looking. He was scary, and that part where he like stretches his neck out and he's like, and I like that scared the crap out of me. For someone who loves aliens as much as I do, like that movie like was so scary. I had this bird. and I was terrified of it. Like, my sisters would scare me with it all the time. They would like hide it somewhere, and I'd move my blanket aside, and that like ET would be there, and like you click a button on its chest, and its like neck popped. It scared the crap out of me, and it was only like this big. It was only a few inches tall. It wasn't a big toy. It just it scared the crap out of me because ET scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, we can't watch.
That's not a scary movie.
We couldn't watch ET at my house because my sibling was so terrified that they would like cry and get really upset if we turned on ET because it was really scary for them. See, I'm a weird kid. It wasn't like a movie for me. It was like appliances. I was afraid of like big machinery and appliances. So like at some point when I was 3, we had to get a new dryer. And apparently I like threw a big fit because I was like, no, machine, scary.
No. No, I totally understand.
Scared of the vacuum, like a dog. I was scared of the vacuum.
I was scared of
like vacuum, like a dog.
My mom would tell me if I did enough that it would eat my toys, and so I'd be like, no, and I would like scream and try to save all my toys.
No, I was gonna say when I was a kid, me and my sisters, we all shared a bed. Like we lived in a really small house. And, like
me and my sisters.
We all slept in the same bed. And we were also kind of close to the same age, so like I guess it was like, why buy 3 child-sized beds that they're gonna grow out of?
Right.
You know? So we all slept in the same bed, but I moved a lot in my sleep as a kid. Now I sleep kind of like a log. I mean, I roll over, but I don't really like stretch my arms out. But like when I was little, I starfish straight up, all my limbs everywhere, and like my sisters like hated how much I wiggled around in my sleep. Like it kept them from sleeping. I mean, I would be mad to share a bed with a 8-year-old who couldn't keep their
stay
limbs
still.
in check. But like I remember I was younger than 8. I don't remember how old I was. Like my older sisters would watch the show Futurama sometimes, and I was very afraid of Zoidberg from Futurama.
Oh my god, I knew you were gonna say Zoidberg.
He scared me. So think about it, and like they would tell me when I was little that like Zoidberg would come into my house and get me if I wiggle around. If I wiggle around too much in my sleep, and like that's what like got me to stop wiggling around so much in my sleep. It's like I was so afraid that he would come
Zoidberg.
Zoidberg from Futurama with the like.
I wish I could make the Zoidberg noise so I could be like.
Yeah, like I was so scared that he would like come into my house and get me while I was asleep, and like that's like such a prominent memory for me as a kid.
Did you say you were the youngest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the youngest of. I have 3 older sisters.
Okay, well, I'm the oldest, and I was the one who did the lying. So I see this from a totally different angle because I also slept in the same bed as my siblings when we were all younger, and for the same exact reason. We were all very close in age, and we moved a lot as kids, and so it was just like we had our own rooms, like we had beds, everything, but we would always just take our parents' bed and be like, "You sleep wherever you want, but we're gonna sleep here." And I would tell my sister, this is not quite, I wouldn't scare her, but I would like tell her she went to daycare and she never slept very well. She always was a bad sleeper. My youngest sister, Erin. I hope she listens to this and hears it. Here's what I'm about to say. But so she would not sleep. And so I would tell her, she like, I don't know, I would just find like a character that she liked. Like I'd be like, Dora, you know her? Yeah, she's going to come to your daycare tomorrow if you go to sleep. You need to go to sleep because Dora's going to be there tomorrow. And then the next night we would get into bed and she'd be like, Dora did not come to my school today.
No.
And I'd be like, that's because she canceled, but Scooby-Doo's coming tomorrow. So just go night-night. I would just like lie through my teeth every day. And every day she would just be like, okay. And she'd go to sleep. Yeah. So like I take responsibility for her sleep for like several years because I just would like just tell her whatever she wanted to hear.
I think
so funny.
Speaking of sleep, to kind of I guess route us somewhere back close to the horror territory. Did you guys ever have growing up like something you watched or a story you read? Because I know I read like a lot of like creepypasta and stuff like that like online. Or, you know, something you listened to that just, like, you couldn't sleep after you, like, ingested that media, after you partook in it.
The Russian sleep experiment.
Ooh,
I had a
yeah,
feeling you were gonna say
scary.
that one.
I can't with it. It terrified me. I thought it was real for several years until about 6 months ago, if we're being real honest. Because it scared me and I did not like it. And I was like, well, this all checks out. It sounds legit, so it must be real.
Well, tell me about it because I don't know about it. Ruined my sleep.
The Russian sleep experiment is it's a pretty popular. I don't know if it originated on creepypasta, but honestly, most scary stories on the internet will end up on the creepypasta website at some point. It's a repository for creepy stories. But the whole premise behind that was that it was these Russian scientists during some war, and they had these prisoners, and they were using this gas stimulant to keep them awake for 15 days. And so it was talking about how, like, every day things would just get worse and worse and worse and, like, creepier and creepier and creepier, and these people kind of started to, like, they couldn't see in there. Like, they were closed up in the room, but they could hear on the outside of the room, like, kind of, like, they would be screaming or they would be talking or they'd be whatever, and it just was getting, like, worse and worse and worse. And then, like, at the end of the day, or at the end of the, like, trial period, the 15 days, like, they go in and they describe what they see, and it's just really, really creepy. I don't really want to, like, go into it. Like, I don't want to spoil it, and also it's gross, and I don't want to, like,
Okay.
kind of go into the,
Gotcha.
like, gory
Specifics.
details of it. But it's basically just this kind of, it's really scary because it's like, you know, from the outside, like, they can't see what exactly is going on in
Right.
the room. There's, like, microphones in there. I don't think there's cameras. I think there's just microphones. There might have been cameras, but I think they got, like, covered up or something. But, like,
Scary.
it just, like, it got really, like, creepy, like, the things they would hear from the outside. And then I pulled open the story to look at it, but it was very creepy, and it was one of the first, like, creepypasta stories I read that I was really like, oh my god, like, that's scary.
Yeah.
I just thought it was real. And because I thought it was real, I was like, oh my god, if I don't sleep, I'm eventually going to turn into this, and this is going to be what I become, and that's terrifying. And so then I wouldn't sleep because I'd be scared. And this is me as, like, an 18-year-old, like, adult.
Vicious cycle. Yeah.
I think my creepy thing happened, like, I don't know. There's been lots of things that have happened that I've, like, media that I've taken in that I've been like, okay, that really creeped me out. But the most recent one, the biggest one, like, recently, is when I watched The Haunting of Hill House, and the character, the bent neck lady, really, really terrified me. Like, I was like, I would be, like, almost asleep, and then, like, all of a sudden my brain would be like, hey, remember that bent neck lady? She's, like, all messed up neck. You're just like,
It's that girl with the
You're just
messed up
like-
neck.
yeah, thanks, brain. Thanks for that. I needed that
But
right
she
now
was-
as I was like, yeah, like, what if she was, like, above you? Because there's a scene, without spoiling it for anyone, because it's a really good show, and I definitely suggest if you like scary stuff to go and watch it, because the characters are great. Like, I just really, really loved the show. Like, I thought it was great characters. I thought it was a great story. I thought it was great, just everything about it, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do next, because I think they put a trailer out. I've not watched it yet for, like, the next round of, like, stories. It's going to be kind of like American Horror Story, I guess, where they're, like, it's like the same group, but, like, a different
It's a
story,
new
I
story
think.
each season, kind of.
I can't say that for sure, but I imagine that that's what it is. But anyway, the part that really creeped me out, like I've said many times, I suffer with sleep paralysis. Not so much anymore now that I'm, like, in my late 20s, but when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I dealt with it a lot. And like we said in previous episodes, just to quickly recap, sleep paralysis is when your brain wakes up, but your body does not. So it's possible to still dream, but your eyes are open. And usually you can't move, and it's like a panicked feeling, stuff like that. So in the show, they do touch on sleep paralysis. It's like this character suffers with that. And there's this person that she sees every time she has a sleep paralysis episode that she calls the bent neck lady, that she's been seeing since she was a child. And there's a part where she wakes up in bed. She's laying flat on her back, which is Fun fact, you're more likely to have sleep paralysis episode if you're sleeping on your back.
If
So
you
she's
get
sleeping.
sleep paralysis, don't lay on your back.
Yeah,
if you
don't
can
sleep on
avoid
your
it.
back. Yeah. Anyway, so she's sleeping on her back, and she's like a kid. She's like a young kid, and I had this when I was a kid, so it was like very relatable to me. She's laying on her back, and she opens her eyes, and Bent Neck Lady is like floating above her, and her hair, like the Bent Neck Lady's creepy hair, is like hanging down like next to her body, and it's just like, it was so scary for me. I was like, I swear to God, if I woke up and something was like face to face with me, I feel like I would have a heart attack. Like I feel like I would have a stroke. Like something would happen to me.
Even if you know what, to be honest, even if it was like somebody, like if it was like my mom waking me up and she was like right in front of my face, like I've actually like one time that did happen and I like freaked out and like pushed her away, like don't do that, like that scared me.
Yeah.
I was like, it's like my mom, like literally, like I can't think of a face I trust more. But, like,
Right.
it still like freaked me out. Like I had like a panic response, like the idea of like waking up and someone's like, hey, like right over your
Right
head,
in
like,
front of you. Yeah.
that,
I've
like-
been hearing from parents that like that's a thing that happens a lot. So if you're a parent listening to this, I understand that like toddlers like to get like right next to you when they wake you up and like just breathe hot Cheeto breath right in your face to wake you up. So looking forward to that one day. But yeah, that was like recently, and I thought about that for a long time. And it would just be all of a sudden, like weeks would go by, wouldn't think about Bent Neck Lady. And then all of a sudden, on just an average Tuesday, I'd be like, Bent Neck Lady, are you here?
Please don't come out if
Yeah.
you're here. Just stay hidden. I think I have a like an example of a story like that for me. And to be honest, it's not even like overtly scary. It's just weird. It's just creepy. It's one of those things. I've talked a bit about this before. It's something we touched on a bit in our first episode. The idea of like the unknown being very scary to me, or like not understanding a creature's motive, you know? And there was this one story I read when I was really young, and it was the Goatman story. And that one really scared me. And it's this creepypasta. And the whole concept in that story is it's like these kids, and they go out, like, it's like, I think 11 kids. And they are all like, they like live out in the country, and like, it's just like the kid and his cousins. He's going out to visit his cousins in the country. And so it's him and all his cousins and like all their friends. And like his uncle owns like some cabins like out in like they're in the woods behind their property. And they're like, oh, it'll be really fun, you know, us and our new friends, we're gonna go stay out in one of the cabins. None of them really knew each other that well. I mean, like he knew his cousins, but he didn't really know all of the other people. But the whole kind of premise of the story is like throughout the night, there's a creature that keeps kind of joining them and leaving, but like posing as one of them in the group. And they're never sure if it's there or not, or if, you know, like, because they don't know each other, you know, it's like one of these things where it's like, you know, one of the scenes that I remember very vividly from this specific story is like there's a part where they're cooking food, like hot dogs or something, and like, God, I just remember like there was enough for everybody to have one, you know, but then like his cousin comes over like, why'd you get two if everyone could just have one? He's like, I just got one. And I realized like all the hot dogs were gone, and they were like, wait, how many of us are there? And like they keep having like these moments throughout the story where they have to be like counting how many of them there are, because like, you know,
Me out.
they're not sure if there's an extra person there or not. And like it's just like all of this stuff of this creature that just keeps coming and like tormenting them, but like masquerading as one of the group. And like that just really creeped me out when I was a kid. Like I remember like reading this and just being so creeped out by like,
Can I trust the people I'm
that
with?
concept.
Like,
Yeah, of like, is everybody with me a human? Is there somebody here that's
Yeah.
like not one of us? You know, it's a very
Yeah.
scary concept to me. And like
Um,
not knowing what the creature wants, because as far as I remember in the story, it never attacked anybody or hurt anybody. It just was scary and weird, and like just the idea of being in a situation with a supernatural creature that's just weird and you don't know what it wants. It's like
I think surrealism is like one of the best horror tropes. Like I think it's one of the best. I don't know. Would you call it a trope? Like surrealism is more like a
Subgenre,
style. Yeah, subgenre. I think that's like such a cool thing, and I'm such a big fan because that kind of is what it was reminding me of. Like it was sort of like I feel like every few minutes in that story, and like I haven't read it or seen it, but it feels like every like few minutes they're sort of having these like, wait, what's going on? Like that didn't seem normal. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But
That's
it's like
kinda
so
how it
subtle that you're like, is it weird? I don't know. And that sort of reminded me of like how surrealism is and like the patron saint of surrealism in movies and TV and stuff is in my opinion David Lynch. He's a huge he's like a surrealist artist, he's a surrealist filmmaker. And like Twin Peaks is one of my all-time favorite shows. This is not really like teen. I mean, I think teens would get bored with it, but definitely Miss Catherine recommends Twin Peaks is awesome. It's a great show. Ask your parents' permission if you're like under 17, maybe. I don't know.
The first time I watched Twin Peaks, I was like, or tried to watch Twin Peaks. I was like 15, and I did get bored watching it, and I watched it again later, like a few years ago, and I was like, wait a second, this is really good. So
yeah, it's one of those shows where like things are just a little off, and like you can't put your finger on it. But David Lynch does such a good job of like with this idea of it's weird. It's just weird, and you don't know why it's weird, and like you don't get any answers with him. So like the thing about surrealism in media is like you don't get an answer. There is no answer. It just is what it is, and that's hard. Like I, being a fan of Twin Peaks for as long as I have been, a couple of years now, like I've just come to accept it. Like when he puts out anything, I'm like, don't expect to know anything. But that's really scary. That always really creeps me out. And another thing that was making me think of the story that you were talking about, there's actually, it's so funny that you mentioned Futurama not today, but in this podcast.
A few minutes ago.
There was an episode of Futurama where the crew has to like go to some kind of like training, like a team building exercise, and they fly through the universe or whatever, and the guy who's like leading this team building thing, he's like this overly positive guy, and he's like, I trust people so much that I'm gonna pick up this hitchhiker, and it's like literally just a guy standing on like a tiny little asteroid with like his thumb out, like trying to get picked up. And so they pick him up, and he's like, I'm gonna do a trust fall with this stranger to show how you can trust people. And then he starts to do the trust fall, and the stranger's like whole body like opens up, and it's just a mouth, and then he just eats the guy.
And he just eats
and
him.
It turns out and it turns out that he's like a monster, and he can like morph into whoever. And so the whole rest of the episode is just like them trying to figure out who's a real person and who's the monster. Have you seen that episode?
I've seen that episode, yeah.
There is also an episode of Rick and Morty that kind of follows that same thing, where he starts to realize that there are more people in the room, because some guy's like, it's great to be part of this family, and he's like, who are you? When did you get here? And then like 7 more people show up, and they're like, we love living here. And he's like, when did all of you get here? And so then they have to like, they start to remember these people. So then they're like, wait, I remember your uncle, Danny or whatever. And then somebody in the room is like, have we always had an Uncle Danny? And then they have to try to figure out who in the room is real and who's real parasites.
I think like that's a really scary concept. Like I think good horror, in my opinion, it plays off of like real fears that people have. Like in a more abstract way, it kind of presents a real fear that you have. And like, of course, some of them like slasher movies, like Friday the 13th or Halloween, will be a more, like I am afraid of a man murdering me with a knife. I think most people are afraid of that. But then you get like
crazy,
like monsters, like the ones in that episode of Futurama or that episode of Rick and Morty that are like, it's scary because like, and those are it's comedy. It's not really horror, but like the concept is scary. The concept of questioning your reality, of not knowing what is actually happening, and what's not. Like, that's scary, you know, like or the Goatman story, you know, like not being sure if you can trust your memory or trust your eyes or trust, you know, whatever, because, you know, this is a creature that is lying to you, like, you know what I mean? That's
Right.
presenting itself to you in a way that you're like disarms you, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I think it's like part of it is that they're using, like, most often in those scenarios in different movies and TV shows and stuff like that, most of the time if they're really like leaning into that story arc, it's like your family or your close friend group, or like it always chooses someone that like you would innately trust and then
Yeah.
flips it on you. So you're like, Mom, no! And it's like
Yeah,
something
exactly.
horrible.
I was I was in another series that I really enjoy. It's another podcast. It's called The Magnus Archives. I've talked about it to these two a million times. I highly recommend it if you like horror. It's all fictional. The concept is this guy. He's an archivist at like a foundation that people will tell them, you know, supernatural encounters they've had, and they investigate them and research them and try to find any truth to it, and like supernatural artifacts and stuff like that. Like, they take them and they study them, and, you know, all that. And the very first episode is very good. It's called Anglerfish, and the concept there is like it's just a story this guy's telling about like this time that he was out and like he was drinking with his friends, and he was walking home, and he was taking like a long way, and he saw this guy standing in an alley, and it just set off like every nerve in his body. Like, he just felt very unsafe, and like he was looking at him, and the guy asked for a cigarette, and he was just like, something's not right here. There's something is not right. And like he looks down and he notices, like, I feel like he notices the guy's feet weren't touching the ground or something like that, and like all he could think about was an anglerfish and like the lure an anglerfish uses to like trick prey into coming close to it, you know. So like a normal guy standing in an alley, like, hey, could I have a cigarette? You know, and you think like, oh, I'll just go over, I'll give him one, you know, if you smoke, which you shouldn't. Teens listening to this podcast, you shouldn't smoke cigarettes. But like, you know, the idea that that's something more sinister, like something trying to get you close enough for it to get you, you know, that's kind of scary.
Yeah, that's really creepy. That creeps me out. I don't like the idea. I'm telling you, like, the creepiest things to me have always been like subtle. Like, subtlety to me is so much scarier than like, I have a knife and I'm gonna stab you. Like, that's scary, but like some guy standing in an alleyway just innocently asking you for a cigarette is like 10 times more scary to me.
Yeah.
Don't
and
ask
like,
me why.
You know that there's something wrong. Like, I think that innate feeling of like, and I think, you know, David Lynch, like, as you talked about, like, is very good at making you feel that something's wrong. Like it's not overtly evil. I'm not looking at a monster or a masked murderer. I just feel like everything is shifted a little bit to the left and it's not right. And like, I'm
Yeah.
unsettled and I'm on edge and I can't explain why. It just is that way. And I think
Yeah.
like that's a very scary, and I think it's really cool when media can kind of, what is the word?
Spark that in you.
Spark that, like make you feel that, invoke that reaction in you that like, this is wrong, you know, something's not right here.
It's kind of like how you feel, if it's similar to how you feel like if you've ever had a dream and then some people can lucid dream and like not be freaked out, and to those people I say congratulations for being just like special. But what happens to me is that I realize I'm dreaming and then I panic because you just realize how weird everything is all of a sudden. And like one time, here's like a creepy little story. I have this recurring dream, and the dream isn't really important, but the most important thing about it is that in this dream I always realize I'm dreaming. Because when I was a kid, my dad told me, I said I had sleep paralysis issues and dream issues. And so one of my biggest fears as a kid was not being able to tell when I was awake or when I was dreaming, because I would see things that weren't real while I was having sleep paralysis, like in my bedroom or like in a real space. But obviously what I was seeing was not real. So I would complain to my dad that I was scared that I wouldn't know what was real. And my dad told me, well, if you're dreaming, you can't read in your dream. Like, you won't be able to like just pick up a book, open it, and read a whole page, because your brain doesn't work that way. Which, like, I've come to find out later in life that some people can do that. Thank goodness I'm not one of those people. I can't just pick up a book in my dream and read it. So I have this recurring dream, and in the dream there's a bookcase, and I get up, I start to feel weird, I start to feel like something's not right. I get that like instinctual, like something's not right here feeling. And I stand up and I go pick a book off the bookcase and I try to read it. And I always realize that I can't read it, so I must be dreaming. And then I panic and I wake up. And so I was telling a friend of mine a while ago about this dream that I had. And I was telling him about the room that I was in the dream and how the specifics about it, like it's a yellow room. There's a lot of yellow in that room. And my friend looked at me and said, one day you're gonna become aware that you're in that room. Like one day you're gonna be somewhere, meeting with someone, or you're gonna get invited somewhere and you're gonna walk in and sit down on the couch, which is how the dream always starts, and you're gonna realize that you're in your dream room. And I was like, why would you say that? Like, I was like, why would you say that to me? It was scary. And, like, I feel like, is the panic gonna build and then not end because I'm gonna be in there?
Yeah.
So that's like, I can relate that feeling that you get when things are just a little off to like, it feels kind of how you feel when you realize you're dreaming.
Yeah.
And it's not positive, because I wish it would be positive. So.
Anytime that I've like been in a dream and realized I'm dreaming, it's always been like I get scared because I feel like, I don't know, I always get this feeling like my brain doesn't want me to know, like, you know what I mean? And so it's like the minute I realize I'm aware, it's like my brain like turns against me, and it's just like, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do this. Like,
I relate to that so hardcore. When I'm dreaming, if I realize that I'm dreaming, the like NPCs, for lack of a better term, like all of the people around me in my dream, like store shop owners, and like, one time I was dreaming and I was at like a carpet store, and I was like, I think I'm dreaming. And the guy at the carpet store was like, no, you're awake. And I was like, no, I really think I'm dreaming. And he was like, no, you're awake. And then like another person came out of nowhere and was like, yeah, you're awake. And they like all tried to convince me that I was awake. And so I woke up and I was like, well, I guess I wasn't supposed to like know what was going on in that dream. But I've had that happen several times where the dream will just try to convince me that I'm actually awake so that I won't go poking around in my own brain, I guess.
Yeah.
I just want to feel like Iron Man, like.
Yeah, like all I want to do is like fly around and like spawn infinite cotton candy. Like I'm not gonna do anything untoward, Mr. Brain. Like, don't worry about it. Like, just let me do.
I don't want to know whatever it is you don't want me to know. I just want cotton candy.
I promise I am not gonna go poking around in the dark corners. I just want cotton candy. Like, if there's a way I could just like speak to the subconscious person in there. And be like, hey,
subconscious brain.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything crazy. Just like, can you stop giving me nightmares where all my teeth fall out? I would much rather have a dream where I get to eat a bunch of cotton candy and can fly.
Exactly. Like, cake. Yeah. The most recent time that happened to me, just like, I could talk about dreams forever, but the most recent time that I realized I was dreaming in a dream, I didn't really realize I was dreaming. First of all, I was talking to Kyle MacLachlan. He plays Agent Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. I love him. He was in my dream, and he looked at me and he said, people say I have weird. And I was like, that's weird. And then I said, oh my God. And then I got like really close to him. This is so true. This is 100% true. 100% true. A real dream that I had. I got scared, and then I got really close to Kyle MacLachlan, and I said, oh my God, I'm having deja vu. And then he got creeped out by me and like backed up and was like, get away from me. And then I woke up.
No, your encounter.
Yeah, people say I have weird hair. And then I said, that's weird. And then like a moment passed and I was like, I'm having deja vu.
But that is how it feels when you have deja vu. Like, it's just like this moment of like, like, you know that meme that went around of like caveman SpongeBob, and he's like he's like standing with like his arms out, like that is how it like sometimes. And in these trying times where every day is kind of a little bit like the same day over and over, yes. I get a lot of deja vu. Like, I'll be like at my desk at work, like, wait a second,
all of a sudden the SpongeBob meme is like
did this already happen? Like, am I, it was really bad, like when quarantine had first started and everyone was at home all the time, and it was just like, hello, like,
yeah, am I sure I'm supposed to be here?
But That's another thing that's kind of creepy. Like this idea of like deja
Something's
vu.
just something's just
Yeah.
off. Quickly about the SpongeBob guy, the like prehistoric SpongeBob. It's one of my favorite episodes, and to this day, when I look at my cat, sometimes I'll just go kabunga, because in like one of the original episodes, the SpongeBob is like talking to Gary, and he's like, Gary, kabunga, and it's just like he's saying, "Come on." So I do that to my cat a lot, kabunga.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe that'll have something to do with the title for this episode, kabunga.
Bunga. Episode 4? What is this? What
I think
episode
so.
are we on?
4 or 5.
4.
Who knows?
Episode 4 or 5. Kabunga.
Kabunga. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of another scary. Like I'm trying to think of a scary book that I've read. But I think it would have to be maybe like a Lovecraft. Some of the Lovecraft stories that I've read that I'm like, those are creepy.
Mm-hmm. I've been kind of on a little bit of a kick lately reading horror books. I really enjoyed Josh Malerman's Bird Box. It's way better than the movie. I'm just gonna say it. The book is like 100 million times better. I'm not like a purist or elitist when it comes to movie adaptations. Like I've seen movies that are better than the book. I've seen like, you know, movies that are different from the book but still really good, you know, but like they changed so much about the book for the movie, and none of them were good changes. You know, like none of them were changes that added anything that was good. Like the movie was fine, but after having read the book, the movie kind of sucked. Like because the book was so good and it was so scary. And that, you know, if you haven't heard of it, it's the concept of the Bird Box is it's a monster book, monster scary, not just like a person, but there's monsters. But the whole thing about the monsters is that if you look at them, like the sight of them will drive you insane. But it's like people are having to live like locked up in their houses with like all the windows covered, and if they go outside, they have to have their eyes covered because if they see it, they'll go insane. And it's crazy to think that this was written so many years ago because it kind of feels like a metaphor for quarantine. Like when I'm reading it, like, you know, seeing the ways like it's about like these people and they're like locked in this house together, and like the way their relationship is changing and getting strained and like pushing and pulling and all of this stuff because they can't leave. And if they leave, they have to have this, you know, personal protective equipment over their eyes to like shield themselves from, you know, this deadly
thing
hazard, you know. And so it's kind of interesting. Almost does feel like commentary on this, even though it was written before the pandemic. But I found the book very scary. Like it was the first horror book I'd read in a long time that actually like I was still thinking about it later. Like I read it and then later I was like, ooh, that one part was really creepy. I'm still thinking about that. Like I can't get over that. That part was creepy, you know. So I definitely recommend.
Like, that means it was really good.
That one. Yeah. Good horror sticks in your head.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it like makes you think about it. Like exactly like you said, you think about it later and you're like, oh my God, why am I thinking about
Bent
this?
Neck Lady.
Oh my God, seriously, Bent Neck Lady, man. I know I'm going to think about it tonight. So just know that like, since I've been talking about it, when I go to bed tonight, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I remember. She had a weird neck.
Her neck was bent.
I don't know. I didn't read a lot of like scary books. You know, I think I'm trying to remember. I guess like I had an H.P. Lovecraft book that I was reading for a while, and like that was really creepy. And then I really liked like some of the I liked more like classic literature, and I'm not even gonna lie and be like, I read that because I wanted to. Like, no, I read it because I was like told to read it in college or in high school or something. But usually I was glad I read it. Like one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories is the Madhouse story, where he like ends up, spoiler alert about Madhouse, he ends up as one of the patients. So he's like a sane guy. He goes to a asylum to like observe. He's a doctor. He's going to observe. It turns out, just going to completely ruin the story. Everybody prepare yourselves. Turns out that all of the doctors, quote unquote doctors at this place, were actually the patients who had escaped, and they locked up the real doctors. So when the real doctors finally broke out and like took back over the asylum, they just kind of scooped this guy in with the crazy people because the doctors thought he was also one of the crazy people. So he gets like, he's like a sane person. He gets locked in this like 1800s or before asylum, so the conditions were really bad. And the end of the story, they're talking about like, yeah, there was this guy, he keeps claiming that he's like a doctor and he's from Europe or whatever, like, isn't that so crazy? And they're like, yeah, he'll calm down, blah blah blah. And then it's like, and he did, he just fell into line, and like now he just lives there. And it's just like, oh, like that really scared me. The way that Poe wrote about it was really good, the like commentary on it, and the way it ended was just like, yeah, he just like sucks to be him, like, you know what I mean? There was no like beating it, like
almost
he just
again like that futility, that facing something that you can't
have
go
no
up against.
control.
Yeah, no control. What about
That one really
what about you,
scared
Hayden?
me.
Got any scary books or scary stories you've read that have stuck out?
I'm such a baby that I got scared reading, and I can't remember what it was called, and I was legitimately about to call it Miss Peregrine's Home for Imaginary Friends, but that's like a whole nother thing. But the one
Close.
with the home for the
Peculiar Children?
Yes, Peculiar Children.
Yeah.
I got scared enough reading that one evening in my actual 20s that I had to like close the book and be like, I'll come back to this tomorrow. And I don't even remember exactly why. I think there was a kid with a gas mask at some point, and those really freaked me out. And I could tell because there were pages in this one that had pictures. So I could tell there was like a picture page coming up, and I was like, it is 2:00 in the morning. And if I flip this page and there's a gas mask kid, I will not sleep. So I just like closed the book, just like put a bookmark in it and just close the book and just put it on my little headboard. Like, okay, you go in there. I go on my phone now.
Look at pictures of kittens.
Gotta de-stress, de-escalate after all that.
So I don't read very many books that are actually scary just because I get scared by such stupid stuff in normal books. Like, that's not even like, I don't even know if it's a YA book. I think it's like a youth book. Like, I think they have that on the third floor, like with the children's books. I don't think it's even like a teen book. And it scared me just a little bit.
If it makes you feel better, when I was a kid, not even a kid, like when, I don't know how old I was when the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out, but I was not young. I will say that. I was not like a child. I was like definitely a teenager. And I was afraid of the zombies from
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Scary. They're really scary.
Scary.
And my best friend, my best friend would come over and watch it with my dad. And I would like go to my room and be like mad because I was like, she's supposed to be hanging out with me. She's hanging out with my dad watching Pirates of the Caribbean.
Came out in 2003.
Yeah, and it was like really good effects for the time. So back in 2003, like the skeletons looked real. And
Davy Jones
watching
holds up to this day.
Davy Jones is very, very scary. And I enjoy his whole thing with like his ship is cursed in such a way that you'll become part of the ship if you stay there too long.
Yeah.
And, like, he's got all these
and like all of the crew members look like different sea creatures. Like I have mixed feelings on Pirates of the Caribbean. I think the first two or three, the ones with Davy Jones in them were very good because they had a very like concise and clear story and arc and like development and all this stuff. The later ones were just no good. They just weren't good after they got like after Davy Jones' arc was resolved. The movies were just they lost it. There was like a whole movie without like Elizabeth and
like what the heck?
Nobody cares.
What were they thinking?
What is his
Elizabeth and Will.
And I was like, their love story it's like Davy Jones, Elizabeth, and Will. That's really all I care about. I mean, like Jack Sparrow's there, but like he's not my focus. Like I don't care about him as much as I care.
He's usually my focus. But then the last two weren't as good. They just weren't as good.
Like poor Johnny. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know everything going on with Johnny Depp right now. Okay, I don't know if he's good or bad. I don't know nothing about it. I just know that like he's not having a good time. He's straight up not having a good time, bro.
He was falsely accused. Pretty much the court, as far as I'm aware, the court was like, yeah, boy, he got falsely accused because the lady who accused him of all of those things kind of came out and was like, yeah, I kind of did all of those things, but to him. So,
great. Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of the internet is like, we have to avenge Johnny, and I'm like, yeah, probably we should do that, but he is having a rough time. I hope he gets his roles back because he lost a lot of roles over it. I hope he gets them back. But those movies were creepy. Especially in like 2003. They were a little scary.
Like I'm like looking at a picture of like the crew members from that movie, and they're very, very creepy. And I think like as somebody who's I really like art. I don't know. I draw, but I also really like character design. That's like my favorite part of like art, and like Davy Jones and his crew, but like it's particularly Davy Jones like just has such amazing character design. And whenever I think of like an ideal to like aspire to, like I think of like I want to be able to make a character that's like as cool as Davy Jones, like as cool and like perfect. Like if I were to like, they're like, okay, we're making Davy friggin' Jones like of pirate fame, like let's make just the coolest sea monster dude that we can think of, but he's still very like sympathetic and expressive and like kind of funny and like all this stuff. Like it's very very good.
There was like Pixar, like the way that like they like made all like the monsters for Monsters Inc. They like individually drew all the hairs on their bodies. It's like the kind of animation that they can do is like truly amazing. Like he had all those tentacles and like it just like flowed so well. Like every single tentacle was like,
oh yeah.
I think of like the part where he's like crying, playing the organ, but he's also using his tentacles, and I'm just like, that was a cool scene. That was a cool scene.
Also kind of scary. It was kind of freaky.
Kind of scary. Yeah.
It came out because I was like 12 when I watched the first one, so I was at this age where I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and I've been ridiculously attached to it ever since then.
But see, I was 10 when it came out. When the first one came out, I was 10 years old, and it scared me. And I like didn't like it. Like I didn't like it because of the zombies. I didn't like it because of all the gunfire. I didn't like it. I don't know why. Like
the people looked gross, like because they were pirates, so they all had like bad teeth and like they were all sunken in and sour.
The guy with his eyeball that creeped me out.
Yeah, like there was a lot of little stuff like that. That was just like
I was very like also creeped out by like physical stuff. So like for example, another example when I was even younger than that. Invader Zim was a show that like I appreciate a lot now. As an adult, I think it's so funny and I love to go back and watch it. As a child, there was far too much bodily function in that show for me. Like I was like, this is disgusting. I hate it.
It would have scared me when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And Invader Zim that scared me. And it was that combination of like it scares you and it grosses you out, like and there was just two that really got me, and one was the episode where he realized he didn't have the right organs because he was an alien, and so he like was going around the school like taking people's organs so that he would have like all the right organs for like whatever health scan they were about to do. And then the second one was one where he had acne, and it was very very gross.
That's like the only episode I personally don't enjoy, because like doesn't it like become its own being and he starts talking to it and I'm like, Zim, stop, no, don't do this.
I remember something about fast food.
It was not a good episode. I remember it, and like most of the time it was fine, but every once in a while they'd have an episode that was just so gross like that, and I could not handle it. Like I love Invader Zim.
Okay, I'm not the only one. Yeah,
but like because it's so funny, like, and it still holds up. I remember I was watching it the other day, and we've kind of gotten off track from horror if we're talking about Invader Zim.
Invader Zim is like kind of horror. If you're a kid,
it's pretty creepy and gross looking. But like I was watching, it was after the movie came out, and I had just gotten in this kick because I'd watched the movie, and I was like, oh, Invader Zim, I'm feeling all nostalgic. I'm gonna watch some of the old show, and it was like that episode where I don't even remember why he was calling the tallest, and he was just there for like 5 minutes, like my tallest, like over and over and over again for like it was a huge chunk of time, and they were just like sitting there like watching him like how long do you think he's gonna do this before he gives up? Like it was like so funny to me. Like it's so hilarious, such a funny show. It still holds up, and like just the concept of like I'm a paranormal investigator, I go to school with a literal alien and no one believes me. Like that is a hilarious concept.
It's a good concept. I remember
but there are a few episodes that are just like, oh, that's too nasty.
There's some imagery that's really intense in that show for being back on. It was on Nickelodeon in 2000, kind of around that era. There's an episode where this kid decides he's going to be Zim's best friend. And so Zim spends the entire episode going, how the heck do I get rid of this kid? He's like really attached. What do I do? And there's a scene where Zim has decided he's going to replace his eyes, like the kid's eyes. And you see the shadow of him like replacing this kid's eyeballs. And the way they draw eyes in that show are super huge anyway. And like, I remember as an adult, as like a 19, 20-year-old adult, watching it and being like, oh my God, this was on Nickelodeon. And we just saw we just saw the imagery of this happening. Like, you don't see it, but you see the shadow.
Literally taking like a scoop.
Yeah.
Just like scooping
Yeah.
it out.
I think it was like a hook. So imagine like a hook just being like, and just like taking out like a hook from one of the Crane games, like that kind of hook. But it was
Like a
really
claw.
cool imagery from
Speaking
something-
of other like really strong imagery and shows that were like, this is disturbing. What about, and also in the horror, genre, Courage the Cowardly Dog. I mean,
yeah.
come on. There was like,
That show scared the mess out of me as a kid.
do you
I
guys
don't know
remember
why
like
it was so
replace
scary.
or return the slab? Okay, that
Ooh.
one. That one scared me. Return the slab. It was so scary. Like what? I was like in my bed, like thinking about it.
I feel like, to bring it back again, it's like kind of an introduction into realist horror almost, like watching things like Courage the Cowardly Dog as a kid, and like those episodes a lot of the time were genuinely creepy and scary and weird, and there was never really a resolution. Like, it was just like, this is just the way things are here. Like, there was never like, why did this happen? It was just like, this is how it is. Just deal with it.
That's
like,
surrealist stuff again, being like, nothing's really right here. I remember specifically like the eggplant episode, the weird eggplant. My mom made eggplant a lot when I was a kid. She cooked with eggplant a lot, and I would always draw a face on the eggplant because it reminded me of Courage the Cowardly Dog. You don't actually, fun fact, you don't actually have to like use anything to draw on an eggplant. You can literally just like take your fingernail and like draw like imprint on it, and it just will stay there forever. And then I also remember like the barber, like there was like an evil barber episode, and he had like a huge mustache.
Ooh.
And it was really scary. I
remember
definitely like
that.
suggest if like any of our, Gen Z teens are watching, or I'm sorry, listening, go back and watch Courage the Cowardly Dog. Please do that, because it's such a good show, and it's so. I feel like this generation, it's one of the few shows that our teen generation would really enjoy.
Yeah, and if they're into creepy things, and they want to watch something that was intended to be creepy and then slowly became something else. A lot of people don't know that the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Was intended to be a horror manga. The way it was designed, the first few volumes were kind of like Saw. Like, they'd be these games of death where the stakes were your life, and like different games based on different things. There's one about like a knife game where you kind of like the one between your fingers, but this one was like stack money on your hand and like do this game with this knife and falling great distances. And it wasn't about card games at all. It was about like all of these creepy games this character could come up with on the spot as he's turning them into like these shadow games. And it's a neat peek into what it would have been if the card game had never become a part of it, because then it kind of turned into like, oh, well, we're going to base the whole thing on the card game. But the original few volumes, if you're into stuff that's kind of creepy, they're kind of dark. And it was a lot of fun when I first read through them, because I had associated it with, this kid's show, and it had card games in it, and it was trying to get you to buy the card game. And then you open the first few volumes, and it's like, wait a minute, this was like some serious stuff. It's good. I recommend. Highly recommend.
Speaking of, I just thought about this. I recently rewatched, when you just forget kind of something that you had a reaction to as a kid, and you like watch it and you're like, oh, like, I recently watched Howl's Moving Castle again. And that's a Studio Ghibli movie.
Ghibli or Ghibli? I don't know.
I don't know which
That
one's
guy.
right. I take a guess
reminds me
every
of, like-
time.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
I feel like I have a 50% chance of getting it right at any given time. But it's a very good movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It makes me cry. It's very romantic. It's like the concept, it's like this world, this fantasy world where there are witches and wizards and all of that. And it's about these cities that are at war, and that's kind of like a slowly building thing in the background, because like one country, their prince has gone missing, and like blah blah blah. But it's about this girl, and she's kind of this very plain looking girl, and she gets this curse put on her by an evil witch, where she looks really really old. So she's trying to like figure out how to get that curse taken off of her, and she ends up staying with this other very powerful wizard named Howl in his moving castle, hence the name. And they start to like understand each other, and it's very, very, very sweet, very interesting movie. But the evil witch, the Witch of the Wastes, she has these evil servants that scared the mess out of me as a kid. They're like these gooey shadow creatures that wear these like suits and these like masquerade masks, but like underneath you can see this like gross gooey shadow form. And like they like have this creepy way of like moving around and walking around that's like almost like a person, but like something pretending to be a person.
Yeah. It looks like a bunch of creepy, gooey, whatever. It's like, you know how you hear about like, oh my God, how do I like? It's like three kids in a trench coat and they're trying to get in the movie. That's kind of what it's like, except it's just like goo, and you're like,
yeah, like, and it'll be like moving around, and like there's this like gross sound effect when it moves, like goo, and it's like, like there's just this one scene that I remember. Well, of course I remember it very clearly because I just watched the movie a few days ago. But like, it's like they're at the market. It's like her and one of the people she's staying with, a very young boy, and she's taking him out to the market to get like groceries, like fish and potatoes and whatever. And while they're at the market, to like by the sea, so like one of the warships comes in to harbor, and it's like all blown up and beat up and like all this stuff, and like everybody starts crowding the port trying to see like what's going on, and she's freaking out. Like the kid she's with is like, oh my God, let's get closer, let's see. And she's like, no, we have to get home. Like this is like, she's freaking out. And she looks over, and in the crowd she sees like one of those servants like just standing there, and it's just like really creepy. It's like looking, and it like stretches its neck up to like see over the crowd, and I just was like, oh my God. Like I remember watching that and just like having like moment of like that like remembering how scared that made me as a kid, like because it doesn't scare me really as an adult, but like the memory of the fear I felt, like, oh my God, that's so
you didn't
scary.
like necks.
Like,
you didn't like necks
as a kid. I guess I just didn't like necks.
The giraffes were
But
not
you
very
didn't
good.
Bent neck lady.
I know, right? I just don't like weird necks, like that are not articulated
necks
correctly.
that don't do what they're supposed to do. A neck has to be the right size and length.
Yeah, proportions. Like,
or else I don't like it.
I don't want your neck to be broken. Okay, like even ET's neck, I'm like, that's okay. I can see your whole bone structure. Like it's all intact. It's okay. It's like an umbrella. Like,
no. Your neck shouldn't be like an umbrella. That's putting that down as a rule. No umbrella neck.
Draw the line there.
I just remembered one that scared me when I was a kid. And I don't know if it scared anybody else. It might just be me. It probably contributed to like a phobia that I have now because I watched it when I was so young. Have you guys seen The Secret of NIMH?
Oh, yes, I've seen that movie.
Do you remember
I didn't read the book.
The Secret of NIMH? There's this scene where they're talking about how the rats became intelligent. And it's this voiceover, and it's like a very serious scene. And it shows these scientists, these researchers, picking up these rats and injecting with huge needles, like things, into their stomachs. And the way that it's animated, it looks like, it's almost like realism the way that it's animated. It's not very cartoony, it's very realistic. And they portray these needles as like these big, terrifying things, and you see that like this medicine has changed these rats, and he's like, and they injected us and it changed us forever. And like there's this scene where like they're in pain, like you see these rats doubled over in pain because they've just been experimented on by these scientists, and then they get out and they try to escape, but all of the mice get blown down an air conditioner vent and like blown into the fan. And only all but two survived, only two of them survived, and it was Jonathan.
Traumatic.
Right, it was traumatic. It was like Jonathan Brisby and the one other one. And then I remember seeing that as a little kid and being like, so that wasn't cool. There's also a very old owl in that movie who's completely covered in spider webs, and they like go to see the old owl.
Oh, he's so creepy.
Oh, it's scary. As a kid, it was interesting to me enough that I wasn't like the kind of afraid that I would turn it off. But I was the kind of afraid where I would sit there and be like, so I'm traumatized now, but I'm also very interested, so I'm not going to turn it off. That movie.
I think Studio Ghibli is really good at that. that idea of like be a little bit freaked out, but you don't want to stop.
This one is Don Bluth.
Oh,
And-
I'm sorry.
And he had, like, a lot of people don't know a lot about his animation because it's movies that people think are Disney. So I think he's All Dogs Go to Heaven and
Oh my gosh, how did I not know?
and An American Tail and
Anastasia.
Anastasia.
How did I not know? Oh my god, those are like all my favorite
Rasputin.
movies.
And Anastasia scared me. He was very scary to me. Like he
Do you
was
remember that
like,
time that he like his head went in his body?
yeah, and he was like, but he was like, oh boo-hoo, what was me? And his like head went in his body, and like the little bat was like, oh wait, it's
In his
okay,
stomach
master.
juices.
Like, yeah, but I'm like, this is gross. But like,
That's terrifying.
Or like he can like throw his wrist and then he like pulls his wrist back on his like tendons. Ugh, that creeped me out so
the
much.
part in Anastasia that scared me is the part where he sends that like sleep demon to her or whatever, and she's like on
Ooh,
the
yeah.
ship.
Oh gosh.
And she's having this
The
dream that
dreams.
it's like this beautiful sunny day, and like she's up on this cliff, and her family is swimming down in the water. Like, come on, jump in the water with us. They're gonna swim with us. But like in reality, she's like on the edge of the boat
It's like
in the middle of a
demons.
storm, and it's like demons in the water trying to get her to jump off the edge of the boat. Like, that's scary.
Yeah, no, I cannot believe that I didn't know that though. 'Cause American Tail, Fievel Goes West was like
Yes.
literally, and what's crazy, like this is totally off topic, and I apologize to our
That's
listeners,
okay.
but Fievel Goes West, American Tail was so like important to me as a kid. I watched it like 1,000 times, and I could still watch it 1,000 times, and I would be on the playground, and I would be like, the evil eye, and nobody knew what I was
Aw.
talking about. No one understood, and I was just like, you gotta give him the evil eye, and like no one, everyone was just like, you're freaking weird, kid. Like,
That was
get away.
me
You're
with the
strange.
movie We're Back. It was
Oh, the
about
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs. Yeah, because like I would always go the Museum of Natural History. Ding, because like the T-Rex wouldn't wink. Because like the other guy would wink and it would go ding, but like he didn't know how to wink, so he would just go ding, and like that like stuck with me. The villain from that movie was also very scary. He was like a man with like a screw for an eye.
Ooh.
And he had like all these crows in control. Like he could control all these crows, and I found that very
Terrifying.
creepy.
I had the first Secret of Nim movie, and there was a second Secret of Nim movie that a lot of people don't know exists, and that was because it sucked. And I loved it when I was a kid. I thought it was the greatest movie ever. But the first movie was kind of like, hey, these rats, like, people did experiments on them, and it was really creepy because they got really smart, but they were in a lot of pain, and it was all this other stuff. Well, in the second movie, and this is a spoiler, but this movie is also like 20 years old, so you know, it's whatever. In the second movie, one of the kids of the mouse lady, who is the you know, main character of the first movie, one of her kids like goes off to learn how to become a hero or whatever because his brother is missing. And like, I don't remember all of the plot. It's been a lot of years. But it builds up to the scene where he goes to Nim to find the brother. And the brother is like, no, you see, I've been experimented on, and now I'm crazy. And he does this musical number where he's like, oh, ha, ha, I'm crazy now. And I'm like, so what I'm understanding is that medicine is bad. And like, that's the impression I took from these movies. But there's kind of a scary scene where the brother, like, I was scared of it as a kid. Like, as an adult, I think it's more funny than anything else. But as a kid, there was a scene where the brother is like, he's got these glasses on and like the eyes are all twisty and it's like classic cartoon supervillain, but he's like, and then they did shock therapy and now I'm insane, join me. And like the whole thing freaked me right the heck out when I was a kid. I remember watching it and being like, why does nobody like this movie? It's just me. And I'm like looking back at kid me going, nobody likes it because it sucks.
I've definitely been there.
That sounds scary though. It sounds really scary, and I also think it's just like so. It's like so insane that they were like, "Hey kids, watch this movie about these giant needles," and then like us showing you the thing that got the needle is now in pain, and then they're like, "Okay, get your shot."
Yeah, I was terrified of that stuff.
Yeah,
I was
that's
terrified of like I have a phobia of like medicine in general. And so I looked back and I'm like, where did I get this weird phobia? Nobody has a phobia of medicine, what the heck? And I just eventually I was like, I wonder if the Secret of Nim had anything to do with that. And probably
I
not.
blame him.
I
mean,
it's a real thing. It's the National Institution of Mental Health or something like that. And it's real. And I did not know that it was real until like last year when I was looking up stuff about the movie. And I was like, what do you mean you can go there? You can't go there. It's in the movie, but it's real. And apparently like the point of the book and the movie were like, hey, stop experimenting on rats. But I'm sure that they still do.
I mean, I think better to experiment on a rat than a person.
Exactly.
You know.
I usually try to buy things that are like cruelty free as best as I can, but you know, companies lie about that. That's the real horror. Animal experimentation.
A real horror. Can't get, you know, stranger than real life. That's the scariest horror.
Kind of where we've come around to is that horror is subjective, and that everyone is scared of very different things for very different reasons. And so it's interesting what scared different people, especially when you're a kid, because kids are scared of very different things. And I guess it's just interesting to think about what scared me might have been totally normal for some other kid, and what scared the death out of some other kid might have been totally normal for me. So scary is very subjective.
Let me ask you guys this. When you were a kid, what did you do? Like, I think about the things that I did when I was scared. So, like, my sisters, for example, you know, I'm the oldest and I have two younger sisters. And I was always known for, like, having the room that was, like once we stopped all sleeping in the same bed, and when we, like, got old enough, we were like, okay, we want our own space. I was the one that, like, had the best room, I guess. And because my sisters both still had to share a room because I was oldest, I got my own room.
Your own room,
and yeah, and my sisters, like, if they were scared, they would always come into my room, and I would let them sleep with me, or like let them sleep in my room. They'd make a pallet or something. So, like, what did you guys do when you were scared? When you were like a kid, like what do you do now when you're scared?
Oh God!
When I was a kid, I had a TV in my room, and that's a lot more luxurious than it was. It was a very big, like, old, you know, those big old TVs. It didn't have, like, one of the colors was out in it, so everything was green all the time on it. But I would, if I, like, couldn't sleep and I was scared, I would, like, turn on, like, Food Network in the middle of the night, and that's what I did to, like, fall asleep. It was channel 72. I remember. Yes. I would always, like.
Did you have Dish Network?
I had Dish Network. It was channel 72.
Channel 72.
I would turn on Food Network, and, like, that would, like, put me out. Like, I think just having something to, like, focus on, because, like, now as an adult, I usually, if I get freaked out by something, I'll, like, get my phone out and watch YouTube, like, kind of, like, and find, like, something relaxing, like, this is my compilation of me building miniature houses, and I'm like, wow, like, wow.
For 10 hours, and then you're like,
yeah, and then, like, after just a few minutes of, like, falling asleep, but, like, I think it's just kind of the same, like, I need a mission almost.
Yeah.
Even if I, like, going and being in someone else's room, like, I'm sure I did it, I don't remember, but I'm sure I did. I was scared as a kid, but, like, as I got older, that helped me less and less, and it was, like, more like, okay, well, I'm in here with my mom or my sister, but I'm still thinking about the scary thing, and so, like, having something I could just distract myself with is what.
I think when I was little, I turned to books a lot. Like, when I was, like, 8 and 9, I'd be like, I'm scared, so I'm gonna read this book that's my favorite, and I had, like, a little lamp, you know, by my bed, and I would read these books that were my favorite. As an adult, definitely the Food Network thing. I just turn on Food Network and then I'm like, I can't be afraid. It's Food Network. It's okay. It's Guy Fieri. Nobody's afraid of Guy Fieri.
Yeah, it's like watching Alton Brown. That's good eats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same now as, like, I've always, I was really similar, Natasha, when I was a kid. I would also turn on something, and hilariously, I also had an extremely old TV, like the kind that, like, sit on the floor. Like, they are their own entertainment center. You know?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't even have
DVD player, like, built in.
No. This was, like, a console. Like, it was, like, huge. And it sat on the floor, and it had, like, a knob that to turn it on, you had to pull it out. And then it was the volume thing.
Turn it.
Yeah. But then it had a keypad on the front of the TV. And you had to, like, dial in, like, 07 to turn it to channel 7.
Horrible.
And we did not have cable, so I had to turn on, like, the news, you know, or, like, something. I don't know. We had, like, PBS and stuff like that.
Those, like, what are those things where they, like, it's like you call in and you could buy, like, a product.
Infomercials.
Infomercials.
Yeah. Infomercials. Yes. One time I'll never forget, I did that, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I turned on the TV because I always slept with the TV on when I
I was a kid. And I still like listen to stuff while I sleep as an adult, but that doesn't matter. As a kid, I turned on the TV and it was like infomercials, and I woke up in the middle of the night and it was the movie Chucky was on at like 3 a.m.
no.
Yeah, and I woke up and I was like, yeah, I was so scared. But yeah, like I did that. I always watch something because my like particular brand of crazy anxiety like brain needs something to focus on while I fall asleep. So that's what I do. But nowadays I usually will turn on, even now when I'm anxious, not even just scared, but when I'm anxious, I'll turn on Good Mythical Morning Funniest Moments. And like it's saved. Like it's always in like the top 3 things that I've watched recently on YouTube. So I can just like hit the search button on YouTube on any of my devices, and it'll like say a couple things that I've searched, and then somewhere in there it'll say Good Mythical Morning Funniest Moments, and I'll just watch a couple compilations. And I'll feel better. I do that in my office at work sometimes. If I'm like highly stressed and I have a minute, I'll be like, I need like 2 minutes of funny Rhett and Link. That's what I need.
I just need to laugh for a second. That's how I am with
Just
that.
to take the edge off. You know?
There's this series. There's these brothers that got pretty popular online. They're McElroy brothers. I don't know if you guys have watched or listened to anything that they do, but 2 of them used to work for this company called Polygon, which is like a gaming journalism company, and they did a series called Monster Factory. And the whole concept of that is they would play games with character creators and try to make just the ugliest guy, like the most freakish person they could possibly make. And like they're both just really funny guys, and like so it was just like this whole thing. It was just like these 2 really funny guys, and they're like brothers, so it's like they just vibe off of each other really well. And they just make ugly creations in character creation games and then play them. And it's just so funny. And so I kind of have that like when I'm like stressed or anxious or scared, like sometimes I'll just turn on like a random episode of Monster Factory and just watch it. Like I can't be scared or anxious or stressed when I'm like watching these 2 like dumb brothers make a horrible little monster and make it run around for my enjoyment. Like
Yeah, I think that it's good to like have, I think it's cool, and the reason I brought that up is because we're talking about all these things that make us scared, and like, you know, we like to feel scared as like human beings. Like we like to be scared, and we were just talking about how like it's an addictive feeling, but like scared also translates into anxious, and being anxious and having anxiety. So I wanted to like give our listeners and each other like ideas about what you can do if you're feeling like, if you're like, okay, I'm done being scared now, like I don't want to be scared anymore, but I still am, so what can I do? So I wanted to be like, what do? We basically just watch funny things.
Yeah, as someone who likes to overload myself sometimes on horror content for no particular reason, I think just a good way to like kind of turn that switch off in your brain when you're like, okay, being scared is fun sometimes, but I'm done with it now and I don't want to be scared anymore. Like just watch something that makes you laugh, or like, you know, something funny or sweet, or, you know, the exact
really,
opposite
like,
emotion of horror. Like
yeah, there's literally like things on Netflix that are just like cute puppies, and it's just like a show about puppies. Like you can find stuff, so just get your mind off it somehow is a good way to do it. Because I also will like overload myself a lot, especially with like something like the house Haunting of Hill House, for example. Like I just recently binged like that whole season, and then afterwards I was just like, what have I done? Like I'm gonna have to deal with this now for like the next few weeks, just thinking about Bent Neck Lady.
Bent Neck Lady haunting you.
Yeah, just showing up at the least expected times. Do you guys know that show Wilfred, where it's like the big dog? You guys know that show? There's like a guy who, so the preface of the show, I think, I'm not 100% sure, so I might be totally wrong. There's like a guy who's like a normal guy, and then there's a guy who's dressed up like a giant dog, but I think everybody else sees him as like a normal dog. So like everyone else in the show thinks that he's just like a normal dog, but this one guy sees him as a man dressed up in a dog outfit, like a dog costume. So like there's all kinds of like, you can imagine like awkward things that happen where he's just like, that's weird. And like I said, I might be totally wrong. I've not actually like sat down and just like watched the show that much.
Watched it.
Yeah, but imagine if like the thing you were scared of just like was with you all the time.
and like eventually you'd get like desensitized to it. Like, do you think you'd eventually just be like, shut up, bent neck lady? Like, I get it. Okay.
I get it. I get it. You're scary.
Your
Your neck is
neck.
messed up. Like, I get it.
Yeah, like if those shadow things from Howl's Moving Castle, you just be like, okay,
Just
like
in my house. It's just like, I get
slurp slurp, I get it. Yeah, like,
it. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Like,
yeah,
if you had to
it would
pick
just be kind of funny.
a horror movie monster or villain
that was just with you all the time, and it couldn't hurt you, and like you guys just had to hang out, but it was like connected to you, like bonded to you.
or the person, if it's a person, or monster if it's a monster, like what
What do you think you'd pick?
That's hard. Honestly, my first, like, it can't hurt me, right?
hurt you? And maybe it doesn't want to hurt you. Like maybe it's like your buddy. Like, you just get to have like a monster or a horror movie like villain or whatever, but like it's your buddy.
Jeez, it's hard.
My first instinct was to say, and this is so crazy because I don't like dolls, but I was like, my first instinct was to be like Chucky, because then at least you could like, I don't know, like just have him around and maybe people wouldn't think like, can other people see it?
Other people, I don't know. Yeah, other people can see it.
I think, yeah, because then like I could just be like, oh yeah, that's just that weird doll. Like, don't worry about him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you could
Like, you
kind of
could-
like
you
go
could
through
play it
life where
off.
you'd be like, yeah, and they'd be like, do you bring that? Like, people would just eventually in like the background, people like behind your back would just be like, yeah, Catherine brings that doll everywhere with her, but like she's really nice, like she's really funny, but she just brings that doll.
Besides the dolls, it's very normal.
Yeah, so you could kind of just be like, oh yeah, it's just Chucky again, like he's here.
You guys
Don't
like-
worry about it.
Can we get on with our meeting? Like,
There's a movie, I think it's from the 80s, that my dad showed me called Maximum Overdrive. And the premise
sounds
of this
familiar.
movie is that like all of the machines come to life and try to kill people. So you got like all these big Mack trucks that are like, "Arr!" and they're like driving into things and people, and like you got like there were vending machines falling on people, and like it's really funny if you think about it. So when you said what would I have that would follow me around, I just imagine this little like RC truck, like a little remote control something just that
But it's like
follows me
alive.
everywhere, and it's like alive, and it just kind of runs over my feet sometimes, like hey, and it can't talk. It just like runs into people's ankles.
yeah, if you
love
ever
that.
had a cat,
You basically have that already.
Yeah, exactly.
Alive and malicious, but it can't hurt you.
Exactly. I love that.
I don't know. I'm very tempted to say the Xenomorph just because I think it'd be cool to have a big Xenomorph friend. Because I think they're really cool monsters. But I think like you couldn't go anywhere with that. You couldn't take him anywhere. Like you'd try to go to McDonald's and maybe like like you couldn't like
yeah,
go anywhere with that.
doll, man. You just would have
Yeah.
a weird, like people would just think you're crazy. Like they
Or,
feel
like,
bad
no,
for
maybe-
you.
Like, but then again, maybe I could have like Jason Voorhees, and I could just be like,
This isn't really Jason Voorhees. It's just a guy who really likes the Jason Voorhees costume. But really, it
Then
is
people would
Jason
think
Voorhees.
he's crazy, not you.
yeah, people think he's crazy, and like I'd be like, this is my crazy friend Jason. I mean,
but
Justin.
not that
This is
one.
don't worry about him.
Justin.
Like he's not gonna stab anyone with a knife. You just don't bother. Don't worry about him. It'd be very easy to be like,
Don't ask
This
him
isn't-
about his mom.
don't ask him about his mom. Don't even say that. Don't even say the M word around us.
We don't talk about that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it would be cool to have a ghost. Like, you know, like any of the ghosts. Have you guys seen like 13 Ghosts?
No,
Some
but
kind of ghost. Yeah, I thought like having a ghost would be cool because then like you could at least be like, hey, go in there and see what they're talking about. Like you could be like, go in there and find out
Like,
what they're planning.
I
What are
know
they
it's
getting me
not
for
a
my
horror
birthday?
movie, but like the ghost parents from Beetlejuice. Not Beetlejuice himself, because Beetlejuice himself is kind of a creep. But like the ghost, if I could just have like another set of parents, but they're ghosts, like Winona Ryder in that movie, like that's pretty epic. She made
Yeah.
out like a fat red.
Better yet, if
cheese
I could just have
factory.
Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be in
Just
your
Winona
house.
Ryder to hang out with me. She's like the queen of horror. She's a
Yeah.
good
Probably has great
a good
opinions
horror
on
person.
horror. If only we
Yeah.
could feature her on this podcast.
oh my gosh, I would
So,
love it.
if
Would
you're
probably
listening-
please join us. We love you. I do love her. She's so cool. Yeah, that's a good question. Who would we have? I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick to my guns and say I would have Chucky because at least he would be like portable. Pretty portable. He like would be relatively blend in. I could just pretend like I'm nuts. and just be like,
Yeah.
this is who I am now.
I think like a slasher villain would actually be really great. Like if I could have like Jason or Michael Myers or something, and I can just be like, yeah, my friend, he's kind of weird. Don't worry about him. And like
Nobody'd
I
ever
just
bother
think-
you like at the bus stop. Like nobody'd bother you.
Yeah,
ever.
nobody. I'd have this big giant dude in a mask, like bodyguard forever, like my buddy. Like maybe he commits some murders on the side. We don't need to talk about that. That's fine. That's
Separate. That's his other life.
That's
Yeah, he only does that part time.
really does that part time. The other part of his time he spends following me around. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. What he does at night is his own business. Okay.
Yeah, when I go to sleep, I don't know what he does. I'm asleep. But I think
Yeah.
if people can leave comments on this, I think you should comment who you would like to have as your
Yeah.
or companion, monster or villain.
If they could be your buddy and they couldn't hurt you, but they did have to follow you around all the time.
Who do you think would be the best horror monster villain for that?
Yeah, let us know.
Y'all want to hear something truly terrifying? You said that you watch Good Mythical Morning sometimes in order to not be scared. Well, that was what, 10 minutes ago? My Facebook is now showing me links, sponsored links to Rhett and Link to Good Mythical Morning.
Wow.
That was very
so
quick.
scary.
The real horror
That
is
is kind
government
of terrifying.
surveillance.
Yeah, government surveillance. You already have that with you all the time.
I kind of stopped and I was like, wait a minute, didn't we just? And there they
Yeah.
are. They're trying expired snacks in this episode.
Dude, I love
Lovely.
them. I really love them so
They're
much.
great. Facebook doesn't have to recommend them to me because I already watched them, so it's okay. But it certainly did pick up on what we were saying in like 10 minutes, it seems.
Thanks so much, everybody. That's a wrap for this week.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Bye.